Armored Core 6 was my introduction to the series, and goddamn did it leave a good impression. I, like many others, really gave this game a shot because of the history of its developers at From Software. They've been known to make some pretty cool games occasionally, and it's safe to say we were not let down with such a massive genre jump from Souls Ringborn. And before all the comments flood in, yes, I'm well aware that they've been making Armored Core for way longer than they have Souls, but Armored Core 5 came out over 10 years ago at this point. And within that time, FromSoft has amassed a cult following behind the Souls series. And there's a very obvious inspiration from those games and the boss fights that you overcome and face in Armored Core 6. Today we are going to run through all 17 of these fights, and for the sake of all our time, I'm choosing to exclude some of the more basic AC fights that don't have many mechanics to talk about.
Number 17, the Strider. This boss is super badass, and it's what really got me started in the game. I was a little bored at first, but when I got to this mission, I was like, holy shit, I'm actually going to fight this giant thing. And it's a pretty fun fight, albeit very easy, which is why it's at number 17. He only has one attack, which is laser. I guess he has missiles too, but those don't really do much. And you just have to take the beast down. You start with its leg, destroy that, bust up all the generators around it, and make your way to the giant eyeball thing that's been shooting lasers at you the whole time. This thing can kill you if you're not like careful at dodging the lasers and stuff, but it goes down pretty quick with some missiles and miniguns and shit. That helps.
Coming in at number 16, we have the bane of all game journalists and the first real filter, tutorial boss HC Heli. This guy is a real dick. Do not be fooled by the high ranking, as the first encounter of this thing can be a little rough depending on how well you pick up the game. But on subsequent playthroughs, it's no different than the other fodder spammed in these early levels. The fight starts off with the heli ambushing you while you scan for your first call sign. It'll fly around and minigun spam the whole fight, and it shoots some pretty damaging rockets, but as long as you stick close and use that sword, you'll overcome this one pretty quick.
At number 15, we have Rusty and Raven. These two are super badass, and they're really narratively impacting, but their mechanics leave a lot to be desired. It's basically just the same ACs that you've been fighting the whole game. I can't tell you a single thing that either of them do that's unique, so they're really easy to take out. And this list is all about difficulty, so they have to be towards the bottom, even though they're both very, very cool bosses.
The PCA SP Captain takes the number 14 spot. It's an AC unit with a fucking tank on its back. Shooting the AC unit between the front two treads is the only way you can damage this guy. This can be pretty tricky at first, especially if you don't come in with the right gear. His three main attacks are a charge, the two chain guns mounted up front, and this big ass laser shotgun that does an insane amount of posture damage. His gimmick is pretty easy, so he remains at one of the top spots on our list. In New Game Plus, you can choose to instead take out the enforcement team for an alternate ending. Coming in at the number 13 spot is the Smart Cleaner. It's just the Juggernaut on steroids. This guy is a one-shot machine if you go in with a squishy build and don't respect the wood chipper arms. Design-wise, this is pretty high up on my list. Volcano Furnace on treads with Mulcher arms is pretty fucking creative. Difficulty-wise, this guy is a piece of cake. What he has in damage, he lacks in speed, so stay back and pick your shots and you'll take him out in no time. In the final chapter, you fight the Reskin for the Liberator of Rubicon ending.
Number 12, we have the enforcement system. This boss is pretty badass. You just follow it throughout the whole level until you get to the very end of it, where you face off with the thing. The thing's mechanics themselves aren't anything crazy. the thing that separates it a bit from the lower bosses is that it just has a boatload of health, so it takes a while to kill. So it's just an endurance fight, and if you have like a light build, I could see this being even higher on the list.
The number 11 spot goes to the Juggernaut. This is a fairly tricky boss for this early on in the game. Basically, the gimmick is that it only takes damage from the back. Sadly, the front is protected by the strongest metal known to mankind because this dude takes 0 damage unless you're on his ass. At least you have good old Rusty there to distract it. However, when Rusty leaves, you have no distraction, which can make this thing really annoying. It's a bit of a challenge to figure out how to hit the damn thing in its weak spot, but do your best to stay above it and capitalize on those spins to sneak in extra shots. Cracking into the top 10, we got the Alaskan Bullworm. It's not only by far the longest fight in the game, but it's also this game's gimmick boss, like Yorm the Giant or Storm King. You need the anti-worm gun to have a fighting chance against the thing, and its only weak spot is its face, which can be pretty challenging to hit until you figure out the timing. Once you land the shot, Rusty fires the biggest gun on Rubicon, and it's stunned for a short period where you can do damage. The worm itself isn't super threatening, but it'll chip you down over time if you can't land your shots. Also, when Rusty fires the final railgun shot, you have to burst the thing down before it gets up, no matter its health, or you fail the mission. This is pretty unfair if you don't have the right build. Creeping into the number 9 spot, we got the Sea Spider. Fuck this guy. Yeah, that's how I'm starting this. This guy might have just the worst burst in the entire game. If you get caught with the wrong combination of attacks into a stun, he can burst you for up to 12,000 AP worth of damage. That's fucking ridiculous. The fireballs it shoots are also super shit to dodge, and if you get hit by the first one, you're probably getting hit by the second one. All of its other attacks are pretty easy to dodge, but this is where bosses really start to get hard. Number 8, Cinder Carla and Chatty Stick. Another late game AC fight, and this one is pretty damn tough. It's a gang fight with Carla rushing you and Chatty Stick jerking it in the back, shooting shit at you. It's a really good idea to deal with Carla first because she's on your ass all the time, and Chatty Stick isn't super hard to deal with. However, I find this to be a DPS race more than anything. I don't even focus on dodging her attacks. With the lighter build, this could be even higher on the list, but they both die too quick. Just make sure you have the DPS to deal with them.
At number 7, we have G1 Michigan. I love this guy, dude. He's like a drill sergeant in this universe, and he doesn't take shit from anybody. He calls all his soldiers maggots and fodder. He's badass. And the fight is pretty damn difficult, but only really because there's so many waves of enemies. There's like 3, I think, before you even fight Michigan, so that depletes your health and resources. Michigan himself isn't really an issue, but you just have to get through so many enemies before you get to him, and you really need to take him out quickly when he spawns, because he'll spawn like some elite, like big ass drones after a while, and if he's there with those drones, the fight is very challenging. So Michigan definitely deserves the number 7 spot.
The number 6 spot goes to a Balteus fanboy that rivals the original and the only reskin to make it on this list. This fight is far less punishing than the first because at this stage of the game you finally got the gear for him. He's got giant lasers, bubble gun shots, and variations of both. The attacks aren't super challenging, but he does quite a bit of damage if he connects. If his placement in the game was switched with the original, he'd be a bit higher on the list, but number 6 is where he's staying.
Number 5, Handler Walter, who is by far my favorite boss in this game, and just one of my favorites in general. Walter was the one guy that I knew genuinely cared about me in my playthrough. He was like a dad, always telling you to get some rest after you complete a mission, and some of the voice lines that he had when you failed a mission were genuinely heartbreaking. Like, I don't want to fight Walter, man. He's always so nice, and he really did care about you. He just wanted you to get your augmentation surgery and be a normal guy again. And he's only fighting you because he has to. You're trying to protect the coral, and he has to destroy it because that's what his father and friends believe in. And that's ultimately what he believes in, that the coral is awful and dangerous for humanity, and it needs to be destroyed to save it. And the setting is so badass too. You're fighting him atop the collapsing, burning Xylem, and don't even get me started on the music, dude. It's amazing. Now, Walter, as for the difficulty, which is what this is about, he doesn't have very many attacks, but they are pretty tricky to dodge, and he hits super hard, so you can't really face tank him and win. You actually have to dodge some attacks, and that definitely earns his spot in the top 5 and sits atop as my favorite boss in this game.
Number 4 rightfully belongs to Balteus, the Great Filter. Every FromSoft game has one. Gargoyles, Pursuer, Gascoigne, Abyss Watchers, Genichiro, Margit, and now this dickhead. As a new player, he's nothing like anything you've seen up to this point in the game. He has so many moves, bullet hell missiles, flamethrowers, lock-on bullshit rocket launchers, and a bullshit shield that's very hard to destroy if you don't know what weapons to use. This boss is the first true skill check and prepares you for what the rest of the game has to come. The final 3 on this list all fall way closer to the end of the game, so the number 4 spot for a boss that comes this early shows how tough the game really is for beginner players.
For this freelancer, I became part of this monster so I could crush you. This time, you will die.
At number 3, we have the true final boss of the game, Allmind. This boss is pretty hard. A lot of the difficulty comes from the fact that there's 3 phases, and they're all completely different, basically. The first one's pretty damn easy, actually. It's him and like 5 drone guys, but he doesn't have that much health, so you can just kind of burst him down and be alright. I never really learned his attacks. But phase 2, it gets a bit trickier. He gets like some melee attacks, some more attacks, and there's 2 giant sea spiders for some reason. It's pretty crazy, and if you're not careful, they'll do that fan melee death attack and just one-shot you, which happened to me a few times, and that's really frustrating. I didn't learn his attacks super well because he actually doesn't hit that hard, but you definitely got to watch out for the sea spiders. But in phase 3, he gets new melee attacks, and all of a sudden he just hits insanely hard. He does like 4,000 to 6,000 AP sometimes a hit, and I usually just try to kill him as quickly as possible. I never really learned his attacks. I don't really have a great strategy for it. I just stay aggressive, try to stun him over and over again, but he is a very, very hard fight.
It's building up faster than I'd expected.
Raven, I knew Walter was...
Wait, something's coming.
Unidentified machine overhead. A response. It's a sea weapon.
The Ibis series. Still functional. Get ready, 621.
Runner-up for hardest boss in this game has to be IB01, the Chapter 4 final boss. This boss has the craziest moveset in the game. It hits so hard, is so quick, and would be the hardest boss in the game if not for one big flaw in its design, and that's its health. It is very easy to stun and burst this thing to death in both phases. It has 2 health bars and it dies very quickly. But the moveset is so complex, it hits so hard that it has to be number 2 despite its small health pool.
It's gonna blow. Get out of there, 621.
And the number 1 hardest boss in this game has to be Air. This boss has everything. It has so much health. She has a big ass shield. She has these really stupid melee attacks that are impossible to dodge. She does so much damage. Multiple phases. It's just ridiculous. It took me so long to learn how to dodge all her attacks, especially the stupid melee ones that are in both phases. Phase 1, I think, is harder because she has the shield, so it takes longer to stun her. But in Phase 2, she turns into like a jet and shit and makes clones of that, and if you get hit by that, you're fucked. And then she'll shoot a Death Star laser beam that just obliterates your health bar if you get hit by it. But the saving grace in Phase 2 is that she doesn't have a shield, so it makes it a bit easier to stun her. So I guess it kind of balances out, but I would still say that Phase 1 is harder just because of that annoying shield. But yeah, Air is definitely the hardest boss in this game. She has everything. She doesn't have the lack of health that IB01 has, or the lack of a complex moveset that some of the other bosses have, or the lack of damage that Allmind has. Air is definitely the hardest boss in Armored Core 6.